Hi team, hope you're doing well. My name is V and today I'm going to be talking about the history of Jirachi in the Pokemon TCG. So historically Jirachi's been a very good Pokemon in the TCG, but usually in a supporting role. Of course Jirachi has had lots of great cards throughout the years with pretty interesting abilities, but yeah, without further ado, let's talk about Jirachi. So Jirachi's first card came in EX Team Magma versus Team Aqua. Of course you would expect it to be in the EX era since Jirachi is a Gen 3 Pokemon. And, Jirachi's first card was not very good at all. But I do want to talk about it just because it was the first card I feel is pretty important. Honestly, these attacks are just very weak. They'd be decent on a pre-evolution. Just having some sort of effect is alright. But, low damage, no special effects or anything. It has very low HP and it didn't have any Pokepowers or Pokebodies. So, honestly, there was just no real reason to play it at the time. But, the art is pretty cool. It is a holo rare. So, the card's actually pretty expensive. It's sitting at about like $50 or $60 at the time of recording. So, yeah. Great card just to have in your collection, especially if you're like a fan of Jirachi, you're trying to collect EX era stuff. But yeah, in terms of the competitive play, it was not very good at all. Though next, we actually do have one of my personal favorite Jirachis ever. This comes out of EX Hidden Legends, and it's a very cool card. So it has the Make a Wish attack, which allows you to essentially just get a card from your deck that evolves from one of your Pokemon you have in play and put it straight onto that Pokemon. And then you have to put 1 damage counter on Jirachi. So the 1 damage counter shouldn't really matter too much. It only has 70 HP. But yeah, just getting those evolutions out, it's essentially Evo Soda as an attack. And so yeah, that's like the main part that's notable about this card. It's also Psychic and Metal type, which is pretty interesting. So it can hit for 2 weaknesses. And that's actually kind of funny with its Mind Bend attack, 30 for 2 energy with Confusion on a coin flip. It actually can be sort of effective against cards like Lugia EX that are weak to Psychic and were very popular at the same time as this Jirachi. But overall, this card was just played in evolution decks, usually stage 2 decks, to try and just get some more consistency, get those evolutions out pretty fast. So yeah, it just helped consistency a lot, and it's very useful in a lot of decks at the time. So in EX Deoxys, we got another very powerful Jirachi, and its Wishing Star Pokepower looks familiar. Then it's probably because of the Jirachi from Team Up that like everyone's playing in Standard, and that card was a retrain of this Jirachi from EX Deoxys. And this Wishing Star Jirachi saw tons of play, but not as much as the Team Up Jirachi does now, because we didn't have as many great support cards to work along with it as we do now. So, the Team Up Jirachi has cards like Scoop Up Net and Escape Board before rotation that just worked extremely well with it. But the only thing that we had at the time back in EX Deoxys was Switch. So it still did see lots of play because it really helped to set up, especially in evolution decks. And you did have Switch, which made it a little bit better. But yeah, this card was still great in, a variety of decks. A few years later in Platinum Rising Rivals, we got a pretty interesting Jirachi. It does have some uses, but it didn't actually see a lot of play, I believe. The main sort of attraction to this card comes with its Detour attack, which is free, so that's pretty nice. And if you have a supporter card in play, use the effect of that card as the effect of the Detour attack. But yes, it can get use a little bit of extra draw power, which is pretty cool. And then also its Final Wish Pokepower says that if it's knocked out, you can just search any card from your deck straight to your hand. So, it's obviously not like a bad card, but at the time there were just much better cards for setup. So something like the Spiritomb could lock your opponent out of trainer cards. And also it had Darkness Grace, which is essentially the same attack as the Jirachi from Hidden Legends, where you just search for a card that evolves from one of your Pokemon and put it into play, and then put a damage counter on itself. and it can also use that attack for free. And then we also had the Yuxi, which had set up where when you benched it, you could draw until you have 7 cards in hand. So, you know, cards like these pretty much just outclassed this Jirachi. In Heart Gold Soul Silver Unleashed, we got another really cool Jirachi. So it had a poke power called Stardust Song, where when you benched it, you could flip 3 coins, and for each heads, you got to put a psychic energy from your discard pile onto Jirachi. So that's pretty cool just to accelerate some energy. And then it had Time Hollow, which could just devolve some of your opponent's Pokemon depending on how many energies were on Jirachi. So, of course, de-evolution is useful in a couple of ways. So, like, if your opponent had a damaged evolution Pokemon, you could devolve that Pokemon, and then since the pre-evolution is going to have less HP, it could get knocked out due to the damage that was on its evolution. And then also, because rare candy was legal at the time, if you devolved a stage 2 that was evolved with rare candy, then your opponent would have to get another rare candy if they wanted to evolve it again. So the Time Hollow attack could make things a little tough for your opponent. But another big way that it was used was in combination with Shaman, which also came out in Unleashed, which had the Celebration Wind Poke Power. And when you bench Shaman, Celebration Wind could move any energy from your Pokemon to your other Pokemon. So Stardust Song, instead of just attaching to Jirachi, essentially could attach to your whole board. So that was a pretty cool combo. Then moving on to the Black and White era in Plasma Blast, we got Jirachi EX. So Jirachi EX is very similar to something like Tapu Lele GX, which we had in Standard a couple years back. And when you bench it, Stellar Guidance just searches your deck for any supporter and puts it straight into your hand, which is a very powerful ability, just adding lots of consistency to your deck, especially because Jirachi EX was super easily searchable by cards like Ultra Ball and Level Ball. So essentially your Ultra Ball and Level Ball could now fetch supporters, which just adds a whole another level of consistency to your deck. The thing about Jirachi though is that it only has 90 HP, which, yeah, it does make it searchable by Level Ball, but it made it super easy to get KO'd, especially because, you know, in the Black and White era, we had Pokemon Catcher pre-errata, and then even after the XY era came out and Pokemon Catcher did get an errata, we got Lysander in XY Flashfire. So Jirachi was just always getting guested. So it was a super big liability, right? Because, like, you know, with Lele, it has 170 HP, so it's not necessarily the hardest to KO, but it's not always going to get 1-hit KO'd. Your opponent does have to work for it sometimes, but Jirachi, super easy to KO, so it wasn't as popular as Lele has been, but Jirachi was still very popular in a lot of decks. Then as an XY promo, we got a really cool Jirachi. So the main selling point of this card is its Stardust attack, which for colorless energy, it does 10 damage and discards a special energy from your active Pokemon. And if you discard a special energy by this effect, you prevent all effects of attacks, including damage done to the Jirachi during your opponent's next turn. So it essentially acts as an enhanced hammer, but it can also allow you to wall up for a turn and force your opponent to have some sort of gust effect like a Lysander to get around it. So that's really cool, can allow you to stall for a turn, and of course during the XY era we had stuff like Double Colorless Energy, Strong Energy, Rainbow Energy that were all very popular. Well, not so much Rainbow Energy, but Double Colorless Energy and Strong Energy were extremely popular during that time. So this card saw play in a lot of decks just to deal with those pesky energies. Then in Shining Legends, we got Shining Jirachi. It is pretty similar to the Jirachi from Unleashed, since it allows you to devolve your opponent's Pokemon, but it does have a couple of key differences. One is that its attack does deal damage, but it's only 10 damage, so, you know, it's not a super big deal. The other difference is that it can only devolve your opponent's active Pokemon, so that is a pretty big downside, but also the main upside of this effect is that it doesn't just put the top evolution card into your hand, it puts all the evolution cards into your hand. So if your opponent has a stage 2 that they evolved from the stage 1, you get to just scoop that up and go right back into a basic. Overall though, this card was not very good because For most of the time that this card was legal, we also had access to Espeon EX, which was pretty much better in almost every situation. But, Shining Jirachi still is pretty cool. It's also a Shining Pokemon, so, pretty nice collector item. Personally, I really love all the Shining cards myself. Then Celestial Storm, we got Jirachi Prism Star. Really interesting card. So, the ability Wish Upon a Star. If you took Jirachi Prism Star as a face-down prize card, and your bench isn't full, you can bench it and take an extra prize card. So pretty powerful ability, but most games it's not gonna get in your prize card. So in order to get full value out of this card, you have to have a way to put it into your prize cards yourself. And we wouldn't really have access to cards that could do that until way later in Sword and Shield base set. And by that time we had Oranguru with the Primate Wisdom ability, as well as Mr. Mime from Detective Pikachu with the Pantomime ability, and Scoop Up Net from Sword and Shield. So these cards created a pretty nice combo where you could use the Oranguru's Primate Wisdom to put the Jirachi Prism Star on top of your deck and draw a card, and then you could use the Mr. Mime with Pantomime to put the Jirachi Prism Star you just put on top of your deck into your prize cards. And then this combo is even repeatable through the use of Scoop Up Net. You could scoop the Mr. Mime back up, or the Jirachi back up, and then just bench the Mr. Mime, put the Jirachi back on top of the deck with Oranguru, and put it back into the prize cards. So yeah, this combo did see some play in Zacian V decks. For a bit, it was actually more popular than the ADP Zacian deck. But yeah, of course, Jirachi Prism Star did rotate, so it had a pretty short time in the spotlight, but overall, pretty cool card. So then in Sun and Moon Team Up, we got a very powerful Jirachi with the Stellar Wish ability. This is essentially a Trainer's Mail in Pokemon form, and it's repeatable every turn. So Jirachi, very powerful. It's been played for a couple years in so many different decks. It's pretty much impossible to count. And the main thing that makes it popular, as I talked about earlier with the EX Deoxys Jirachi, is the fact that for most of its time in Standard, we had access to a skateboard, which is synergized perfectly, essentially negating the downside of Jirachi putting itself to sleep, allowing you to just pivot out of the active. And then also, more recently, Scoop Up Net, just coming out a couple sets ago, allowing you to scoop up the Jirachi and send up another Pokemon. And then, of course, we've always had access to Switch, which is a very good card in decks using Jirachi. So Jirachi, obviously just an insane setup Pokemon, and so many decks were able to just make use of it, especially since its ability can be used multiple times per turn if you can get multiple copies done. And finally, the most recent Jirachi is Jirachi GX in Sun Moon Unified Minds, I believe. So this card hasn't seen a ton of play. The main place it did actually see play was in early iterations of the Mewtwo and Mew GX deck, since Psychic Zone essentially just says don't apply Psychic Weakness when Pokemon take damage from attacks. So very useful because Mewtwo was very popular, and a lot of people are trying to counter it. Also, it's weak to itself, which creates kind of interesting dynamic. But yeah, that's the main selling point. Although it does also have an attack Star Search for 1 Psychic Energy to just accelerate some energy, which was used occasionally in more of a dire situation. And also the GX attack is not too bad. For 3 energy, it does 100, and it essentially just allows you to wall up for a turn. But yeah, overall, not a great card, but not the worst card either. It's a useful card. That's going to do it for the history of Jirachi in the Pokemon TCG. Make sure to like if you enjoyed, dislike if you didn't enjoy. Tell me something I could work on if there's something that you thought I didn't do a very good job at. Yeah, if there's a Pokemon you would want me to cover in the future, make sure to let me know. And yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a great day. And Avi out.